This book is so packed with brand new lore, it's insane. There is so much to go through in this video. Not only do we have new interactions with the likes of the Fallen, the Emperor, and his custodies, we also learn more about the happenings on the surface of Terra and its myriad internecine conflicts, not to mention a glimpse into the dark cells of the custodian Shadowkeeper's shield host. This is your spoiler warning. This video contains a lot of new lore from the recently released novel, Cypher, Lord of the Fallen. Make sure you keep an eye out for our next videos, as there is way too much lore in this novel to go through in just one. So we're dividing this into a part 1 and part 2. In the videos following these two, we'll discuss new lore that has more to do with Terra and the Fallen themselves, and less to do with this storyline we discuss now. Rabute Guilliman has recently arrived on Terra with his disparate band of guides and protectors alike. As the Cicatrix Maledictum tears its way into the realm of real space, the chaos deity Khorne seizes its chance, unleashing hordes of the demonic fresh from battlefields of its own design within warp space. Set loose upon the unsuspecting population of Terra, what ensues is not only a desperate battle for survival, but a riot of fury and mayhem as the citizenry, pilgrims, and officials of Terra are driven mad with hatred, unleashing violence upon their fellow man, whilst demons rampage through streets which just that day played host to countless hordes of the faithful. Though this is not the first time such turmoil has found purchase upon the soil of Terra, and it will likely not be the last, a more grave threat is on the precipice of being unleashed. However, to label this man as a threat is surely an understatement. For the discernible future, he may very well be the greatest hope the Imperium, and indeed the Emperor of mankind, has, or he may indeed be the hand which seals its fate. The Imperial Palace at the end of the 41st millennium dwarfs the size of the largest ancient kingdom. Underneath the Imperial Palace's northern region lay the Dark Cells, a vault which houses the most dangerous, if not the most powerful threats that could dare harm the Holy Emperor of mankind. Here exists powerful Xenos, humans, and objects which the Shadowkeeper Order of the Custodian Guard cannot or will not destroy. To speak of the Dark Cells in as mundane as a simple one-dimensional description is to do them a grave injustice. If we were to describe them as such though, we would say that the Dark Cells are over 2,500 square miles in area. The walls of each cell are perfectly created within the hard rock of the earth, that no imperfection or indent blemishes their surface. Each cell's door is so perfectly inset within the wall that no leverage could be used to pry it, for the technique to open such a doorway is beyond the comprehension of mere mortals. However, to effectively imprison such beings as an old man whose spoken words can kill billions, a creeping, coiling darkness which has no true shape or form until it is seen, an eater of gods, or a serpent of ending, those responsible for keeping such terrors contained must consider measures beyond the scope of the mundane. The Shadowkeeper's guest cells are shielded by null dampeners and etheric seals, protecting those without from the malign influence of the damned. The Dark Cells themselves are a maze, forever remaking themselves. The walls and floors alone a deterrent capable of pulping those not familiar with its intricate motions as they seek to traverse its depthless paths. Murder cyborgs sporting flechette pistols and whirring blades as limbs prowl the dark passages of the maze, forever destined to seek out interlopers or escapees throughout the Dark Cells. Gun servitors silently wait in alcoves fitted with cannons which could punch an Astartes from their feet, and weapon clusters watch motionless, ready to fire upon any who should not be there. When a custodian of the Shadowkeepers moves throughout this great maze, they, demigods made so from the unfathomable genetic crafting secrets of the Emperor himself, must do so in time with the microsecond changes between maze wall, floor, and ceiling, their foot lifting from the floor before falling on what was a distant wall, as anti-graphitic systems change which way is up. These are merely two of its dimensions. Within this prison, not one of its charges has ever broken free and succeeded in exiting the palace above. All of that is about to change, for the Shadowkeepers hold in their possession An Astartes whose guile surpasses even the most skilled of Assassinorum operatives, and whose determination has seen him survive time and again his pursuers from one end of the material galaxy to the other, into the warp and beyond. Within a holding cell, Cypher, Lord of the Fallen, calmly considers events which are due to transpire in the preceding hours. Since the destruction of Caliban, his life, his mission, and indeed his single purpose for existence has led to this moment. He is finally where he needs to be. A lot can be said of the one called Cypher. Whether he is an individual or whether the title is inherited, Cypher has been cited so in discord throughout the ranks of loyalist and traitor alike over the millennia, the Unforgiven chapters doggedly pursuing him throughout the galaxy, only to be met with frustration time and again as Cypher slips from their grasp. None truly know the agenda of this Astartes or his true allegiance. Even the custodies of the Shadow Keepers who have been entrusted with his detainment do not know where his loyalty lies, or if his great skill and ability truly pose a threat to the Imperium, but that they could be used against the principal, that is the Emperor, is enough to damn him to execution, or a quiet, solitary existence in the dark cells. 11 of the Fallen are imprisoned on Terra, Cypher and 10 of his brothers. All have followed him on his mission to keep safe the Primarch Rabute Guilliman as he travels to Terra, Cypher seeking to gain an audience with the Primarch's father himself. In fact, it was voicing such intent which led to Cypher's entombment and the situation we find ourselves in now. They are, all 11, being housed in separate holding cells, whilst a custodian guard assess what to do with them, truly unsure whether the Astartes are traitors to the Imperium or not, as a lion's lost sons wait patiently, some with malice in their hearts and the touch of dark gods, others burning with fires of loyalty undimmed in 10,000 years. A strike force of their younger kin of the Dark Angels chapter make ready for their descent, intent on bypassing the myriad defences of the Imperial Palace against the beating heart of the Imperium itself, for their best chance at securing Cypher, who they know is being held within the dark cells. The legions of Khorne rampage across the surface of Terra and throughout even the Imperial Palace. This tumult of blood and conflict will prove the ultimate distraction for Dark Angel's epistolary Mordecai's troops to go unnoticed. They have sieved through Vox transmissions from the surface of Terra, arriving to offer aid during the creation of the Maledictum, only to find their most elusive adversary being discussed over the Vox. With the serfs who heard put to death, the team is ready to make planetfall. Constructed of the very best the Dark Angels chapter has in its service, all are members of the Inner Circle, Deathwing, and Ravenwing both, and in the name of their chapter, all have steeled themselves for the upcoming act of treason. All chapter identifications, honour markings, or any other item which could trace the Marines back to the genetic heritage of Lionel Johnson is removed from their plate. Should any perish in battle, they know their bodies will not be recovered. Their flesh and armour both will be incinerated, so as to mask their true origins from those agents of the palace. Within the northern region of the palace, the Dark Angels make themselves known. 15 minutes after making planetfall, their presence is felt at 3rd Strata Complex, Primary Service Coordination. Here within this hall on hallowed Terra, a mere 20 armed men and overseers supervise the 100-strong army of scribes and serfs, vital though unimportant work, serfs who light the myriad candles within the northern region of the palace, carriers of messages and sustenance to those who toil within the labyrinthine passages of the palace, scribes whose writings accumulate over billions of tons of parchment, most never to be read, stored in dark places to decay, forgotten. A handful of guards are present, though under the weight of pomp and ceremony, their martial skill has blunted. As the doors to the Strata Complex blast inwards off their hinges, the Dark Angel elite swiftly enter, Mordecai's psychic might freezing all in their tracks before they can flee, though a distress signal is sent. Mordecai mentally interrogates the Prefect Primus present. The important but forgettable man has locked in his mind information regarding the layout of the palace, which he himself did not even realize he knew. Filtering through the man's life experiences, Mordecai attains the secrets of which the man never knew himself. The primary entrance to the dark cells are north, 2.5 miles. Security level is extreme, though that is to be expected when in the home of the Emperor's custodes. Most vulnerable point of entry is an air circulation passage. As for the scribes, all were put to death by a bolter. They had seen the Astartes, and in doing so, were condemned. As blood runs across the floor, the Dark Angels advance towards the dark cells. Though one could be forgiven for thinking so, the Astartes of the Dark Angels take no pleasure in acts of wanton slaughter such as this. As all Astartes, they are creatures of duty and logic, though above all other chapters, the Dark Angels are one of secrets, and those secrets are protected at all costs. As destruction is wrought and lives are taken, not just on the surface of Terra, but within the walls of the palace itself, Doomscryer Encia, an augur of the Order of Sarkana Auxilia Custodes, reveals to Custodes Warden Hikaron of the Dark Cells a troubling portent. An agent of utter ruin to all the Custodes exist to keep safe is within the palace walls. Or that same agent will be a beacon of hope. Very soon a single choice will be made and the future set. There is no going back. One of the charges within Hikaron's jail is the source of Encia's visions, though they are shadowed and not clear. Meanwhile, in an effort to momentarily mask their approach towards the dark cells, Mordecai's strike team detonate a millennia-old power and communication relay temple. Secondary processors and ancillary plasma generators should divert power from other systems to maintain the integrity of the dark cells, though simultaneously, the systems watching for any approaching intruders should stay offline long enough for Mordecai and his team to continue unnoticed. That is what should happen, but fate has a funny way of defying probability. As backup systems engage, the layers of redundancy and backup built into the palace's security systems, which control the dark cells, fail. A small item, an electro switch, contains a fault. A fault in its making, which has been present for over 3 centuries since its creation. During its assembly, an elderly man, toiling on a Mechanicus processing line of numberless thousands, perished of a heart attack whilst maintaining the supreme effort of completing his last assembly. The assembly process would be faulty though, given the man's life slipping away during its construction. This part, the electro switch, would carry on and eventually be used in the construction of the security system for the Custodes' dark cells. With no power now to the upper third of the dark cells, was it fate or some other force smiling upon the Lord of the Fallen? As the forces of chaos continue to unleash their fury, surging through the newly formed cicatrix maledictum, as well as over the surface of Terra, warp energies now flow into the dark cells. Security measures and psychic shielding are not enough to halt the eldritch storm of power. Creatures best forgotten about are freed. The Fallen are quick to react. Breaching their unpowered cells, they are free within the greatest prison on Terra, and without their armor or their weapons. There are few ways in or out of the dark cells. Though there exist the main gates which bridge the Imperial Palace to the cell complex, there are ancient tunnels worming their way below the cells into the planet's crust. But also one other way. The Door of Cogs. More a tunnel than a doorway, it leads from the black cells into the Mechanicus ambassadorial enclave within the palace itself, and serves as the entrance for the priests of Mars to service the various machinery within the jail. The tunnel, at 22 yards across, is patrolled by gun servitors and scanned ceaselessly by weapon emplacements. Gene spore sifters and ident scanners ensure none but the priests of the Mechanicus travel throughout its length unhindered. It is here that the Custodes send inmates, equipment, and weapons for tech priests to analyze before disposing of them. By chance or some twist of fate, the Fallen's weapons have not made it further than the outside door of the Door of Cogs, and after a swift but brutal melee, the security servitors are murdered and their weapons secured. All is present but the one item Cypher values above all else, the sword always kept on his person, never drawn and never put down. The one reason his brother Fallen have to follow him is lost. The fallen, the betrayed, those who out of all the galaxy's creatures have every right to rage at their gene father and the Emperor himself, find themselves in the depth of the Imperial Palace within blade's reach of the Golden Throne. There are some among their number who wish to take that path of vengeance which chance has gifted them. But the leadership of Cypher and the will of his fallen brothers who follow the bearer of the sword win out. They must press on to reclaim the sword and go where the blade is needed. With armour, blade and gun, the fallen melt away into the shadowy places beneath the Emperor's palace. As the fallen brothers of Caliban make their way through the bowels of the palace, Mordecai's Deathwing are beginning to draw attention. It is night on Terra, and living nightmares battle against the palace's defenders, whilst a living demigod has returned to the Imperium's fold. But even so, as the Dark Angels neutralise patrolling arbitrator kill teams and bypass security systems within the palace, the risk of discovery begins to increase. Besides the Sons of Dawn, the Imperial Fists whose sacred right it is to stand ceremonial guard within the palace, there should be no other Astartes present. Back within the dark cells, other than Cypher and his brothers, all those who escaped have been slain or once again contained. Within Cypher's cell, the doomscryer Encia sees echoes of the past. As the skilled psyker presses her hand to the floor of the cell, she can see Cypher as he was. He is waiting in his cell, legs crossed and eyes closed. Swirling around him are changing shapes, a figure bearing a broken sword, a king on a throne, a knight asleep on a bed of stone, images of unborn futures and possible events yet to occur. But as Encia and Hekaron watch the translucent figure of Cypher past, the image changes and warps, a constant ebb and flow of uncertainty. Cypher, Lord of the Fallen, does not follow one path, but carries the future with him, forever the manipulator and master of misdirection. But Encia knows these paths must cease to diverge, and merge into one certain event yet to occur. Warden Hekaron and Doomscryer Encia do not know with any certainty whether Cypher intends to harm the Emperor of Mankind, but even the slightest chance means he must be stopped at all costs. Of all the images Encia conjured, one stays solid, revolving in the air above the pair. The sword. He seeks it now, and so they know if they bear it, they will not need to search for Cypher. The ancient Astartes will find them. Within the Keldron rift, beneath the tangle of moved tectonic plates and hurriedly constructed causeways, Mordecai and his Deathwing lay in ambush. There is but one path across the depthless rift, a decrepit, rusted bridge. High above, the distant boom of detonations and sparks of muzzle flash can be seen as Terra's populace are put to the sword by creatures of nightmare. The fallen band make their arrival to the gap between sheer cliff faces, spied by the Deathwing hunters and completely unaware they are being watched. From the other side of the chasm, Mordecai instructs his brothers to hold fire and wait. Destroying the bridge whilst the fallen traverse its treacherous length will rob them of their one chance for redemption. No, this must be done properly, with no Dark Angel interrogator chaplains present to press their wayward brethren for answers or confession. Mordecai is determined to make a good account of his efforts, so far from his chapter. As Cypher himself mounts the decaying bridge, Mordecai's hunters strike. Missiles streak towards the fallen as bolters discharge, the Dark Angels eager to quickly suppress and pin down their fallen brothers whilst they are helpless in the open. Quickly realising the identity of their assailants, Cypher is barely shocked. Despite the odds, the unforgiven have found them. Even in the bowels of the Imperial Palace, their hunters pursue them still. Willing to risk treason to atone for the sins of their forebears, Mordecai offers Cypher's band redemption if they yield, but not a legionnaire halts in their return fire or countercharge. Calibanites of two vastly different eras clash in combat, a mirror of the frenzied struggle occurring above their heads on the streets of ancient Terra. Black armoured fallen gradually begin to pierce the ordered cordon of those Marines in forest green. Cypher, wielding his trademark bolt and plasma pistol combination, lays low the first of Mordecai's band. One bolt round to knock the weapon from his young brother's hands, one to the chest to put down the upstart, and finally a plasma shot to the head, perfectly aimed to ensure the man does not rise again. The power of Mordecai's psychic might is exercised now. He binds Cypher and one of his brothers, Corleone, telekinetically, bidding his warriors blast the bridge from below the traitor Astartes. If they will not yield in penance, their lives are forfeit. But as the bridge crumbles under the barrage of dark angels' expertly poured fire, one of Cypher's band, and Astartes of prodigious psychic might and considerable chaos taint, Bacariel, summons the energy of the warp churning around the melee, and sends it hurtling into the dark angels' epistolary. Bacariel is alight with bright fire. He radiates controlled aggression in the form of warp-powered fury. He lifts the crumbling bridge from underneath the fallen's feet, steel beams twisting back into shape as they elevate back into the place they have occupied for so many millennia. As the fallen troop charge across the gaping chasm towards the Dark Angel strike team, missiles, plasma, and a hail of bolt rounds lay low 2 of their number, rendering their forms such a gore-strewn mess that they cannot even scream as they plummet ever downwards into a darkness so deep it pierces millennia of forgotten history and civilizations. An exceptional place to die. Bacariel, a white fury of pain and vengeance both, sends rocky shards hurtling towards the ring of Unforgiven, claiming several souls in the blink of an eye. But as the tread of the fallen finally transfers from bridge to meet dust-layered ground, the fallen open up, laying low more dark angels to cover their retreat into the labyrinthine tunnels beyond the ambush, but not before Mordecai's psychic might reaches out, collapsing the ceiling around the Knights of Caliban, trapping one under the fallen debris. 8 ancient veterans of a war long forgotten remain to pursue the machinations of a lord whom many do not even trust, trapped under the earth of a planet which has long wanted their kind dead. Of course, it would be easy to call into question the skill of the Deathwing within this recent exchange, though it must be remembered that the primary objective for any fallen hunt is to capture the subject alive, to extract a confession, and offer them redemption in the name of the Lion and the Emperor. As the Lion's Gene Sons make war between themselves, Warden Hikaron and Doomscryer Augur Encia are united in their effort to locate the elusive blade which Cypher yearns to repossess. Their searching brings them north of the Lion's Gate, to an especially high tower. It is linked to the surrounding palace by granite bridges, and even during such a time, where war itself has found Terra once again, there is not a single guard visible. It is to this place that the especially rare and powerful weapons of the Custodes' prisoners are taken, whether they are to be used, understood, or destroyed. Upon gargoyles carved by hands millennia prior, bionic crows spy the approaching pair, no doubt alerting those within of their presence. But this is no mundane guard tower or ancient administratum complex. This is the court of assassins. As such, this place has no need of quaint concepts such as guards. The Officio Assassinorum, an institution even more ancient than the Imperium itself, in which the art of dealing death is sacred. Anyone being inside that tower would at least give a Custodes pause for thought. A Vindicare agent, an assassin whose mastery of the rifle, and in fact any gun, spied the interlopers through the scope of his Exodus rifle. Senses attuned to any slight change in movement, breath held to ensure nothing upsets his aim should the order be given to fire upon the Emperor's agents. 2 more, assassins of the Calidus Temple, had been tailing the Custodes for some miles now, though their covert actions were not subtle enough to fool the golden pair, neither powerful Psyker or golden gilded demigod. Kratos, keeper of the Court of Assassins, an aged member of the Calidus Temple, greets Warden Hikaron and Doomscryer Encia, though that is where the niceties end. You see, just like many institutions across the Imperium of Man, both the Officio Assassinorum and the Adeptus Custodes serve the master of mankind. Compared to the masses of humanity, they are godlike in their innate capacity to but reach out and deal death with inhuman efficiency. But that does not mean they share the same goals, and it certainly does not mean that they are friendly towards one another. It is said that the court of assassins within that tower, a shallow bowl 10 paces in length, stairs on either side, and a circular opening in the centre which disappears into darkness, was shaped for the death courts of Old Night, were those in need, whether powerful king, empress, or lowly peasant, could beseech the death dealers within for their aid in either murder or protection. Encia is gripped by a pain like thousands of ice-cold needles stabbing within her body. A terrifying freeze grips the augur, though through her stalwart inner strength, she dares not let her face betray her in this den of vipers. The cold of nothingness is felt now by Hikaron also. The observer and the voice are announced. The observer of the court, called Nor, has a face adorned with an avian Xenos skull. The second figure, tall, wrapped in robes which steal the light, peers at Hikaron and Encia through the eyes of a human skull, partially obscured beneath a cowl. This is Theta, a member of the Collexus as per the ancient decree which governs such traditions, and she is the voice of the Abyss. The Assassinorum will not simply return Cypher's blade, even though it was delivered that very night. By process of agreement between these hallowed organizations, any weapons passed into their care belonged to the Assassinorum, and they were not in the habit of breaking tradition. But this night both the Assassinorum and the Custodes share an enemy, one who has evaded the Officio Assassinorum 34 times and ended the lives of 4 of their number in the process. The best way to draw him out? The sword. Warden Hikaron will track the fallen angel. The Assassinorum will gain their chance to honour a kill order millennia old. Before Hikaron leaves, the voice of the Abyss warns the Warden to be careful what he is thankful for, and that some gifts have a price. Mordecai, member of the Inner Circle and Epistolary of the Dark Angels chapter, interrogates the fallen who became trapped in the rockfall. Before ending the Calibanite's life, the fallen angel betrays Cypher one last time, detailing where exactly Cypher and his other brothers are headed. Cypher is pursued by an elite assortment of the most dreaded killers humanity has to offer. The bodyguards of the Emperor of Mankind, assassins whose forebears had even introduced a Primarch to Death's Kiss, and his own young, impetuous kindred, their hatred for Cypher and his ilk burning brighter than any of the others, no matter how slighted they had been. Beneath the Imperial Palace, the hunt continues, the greatest fugitive humanity has known. I hate to leave you hanging, guys, but this video is getting a bit long now. Make sure you tune in next week for the epic conclusion of this tale, including intervention by the Emperor himself. Take it easy and have a good one.